Michael Malice here. Let that be your welcome for the next hour. We got a real treat here and a bit of a coup, because we've got one of the most important figures, I think, in contemporary political discourse. We have all the way from Australia, Imam Tawhidi, whose Twitter hashtag is Imam of Peace. Is the Imam? What's your Twitter handle?
Imam
of Peace. You travel around the world talking about Islam, and you're coming from an informed perspective. You were raised, in Persia. You studied. I don't even know the exact verbiage because we're so ignorant about it here in the West. And your new book, The Tragedy of Islam, comes out December 7th, which is going to be in about 10 days from when this airs. Welcome to the show. And one of the things you were talking about when you read your book, one of the first things you say is, I'm putting this in writing because I expect to be killed.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Michael. In reality, I am not only a student of Islamic teachings, but I come from a lineage that were basically my ancestors were the companions of Prophet Muhammad. And they played a big role in funding his movement and as well as spreading Islam throughout the Arabian region. And one of those most prominent figures was Adi bin Hatim al-Ta'i, who is the son of Hatim al-Ta'i, a very prominent Arabian legend. The Arabic phrase, more generous than Hatim, is actually referring to my ancestor Hatim, who was known before Islam as a very generous man and wealthy. His children then converted to Islam and in the very early years and became friends and companions of Prophet Muhammad, and they fought all the battles with him. And my particular ancestor fought so much, he lost 2 of his eyes in battles. The point I'm trying to make is I'm not a convert into Islam.
Right.
I come from a lineage that is very well known, very well respected. Most of the Arabian tribes in the Middle East, the Al-Budayri, Al-Nabhani, Al-Ta'i, they all go back to my lineage. So I come from a very prominent Arabian tribe.
Pedigree.
Yes, and also we have many Muslim scholars. So I'm also a 3rd generation Muslim Imam. My father founded the first Shia Muslim mosque in Western Australia, and he named that Mary Mosque, St. Mary Mosque, because it was a church previously. So yeah, it's been a long journey for me. So I do come from that background, and my time in Australia was fairly basic. I was there as a child. I was born in Iran. We went to Australia in 1995, and then I went back to study in 2007, 2008, and I stayed in the Middle East amongst its greatest ayatollahs, and I became well known amongst the figures of the Iranian regime, even the Khomeini family, very close with them. And then I left that whole atmosphere to go and study in Iraq because it was more open for students to study any book they wanted. And ISIS took over in 2014, one of the most important cities, and I was there, and it was very hard for me to get out, and my Australian passport basically saved my life. So 2015 I came back to Australia, and it's been going on ever since.
I don't even know where to start because we have so many questions, because there's so much misinformation about Islam in the press. Let's start with some maybe idiosyncratic questions. For a long time, we were told that when Ahmadinejad was president of Iran, that he wants to unleash, I think they called it the 17th Imam, and he's going to have nuclear war as soon as he has the possibility, and that didn't happen. What did you think when people were talking about that in the press? Is that an accurate portrayal of his views?
Well, it's very interesting because I was in Iran studying when Ahmadinejad was in power. And what the West saw of him isn't what the Iranians knew of him. So what you saw is not what we knew. People used to say in Iran that the West is so outraged by this man, but we know who he is, so there's no reason for you to be outraged. Ahmadinejad is one insecure person, very delusional. In fact, in my book, I speak about how he paid off a professor who was also an Ayatollah called Misbah. He paid him off, and Misbah rhymes with the word Timsah, which means crocodile in Arabic. So he's known as Professor Crocodile, literally Professor Crocodile. And he paid him off to then issue a fatwa against the other political candidate that was running against him, a death fatwa.
Oh,
so instead of his opponent worrying about winning, he was worrying about his life.
It's like the Clinton family.
Exactly. So Ahmadinejad ended up winning. Now, it was very important for Ahmadinejad to create some sort of divine image for himself, because he's up against a political party of clerics, and he's not a cleric. So he needed to somehow catch up. So he began to visit these ayatollahs and say that I'm having these dreams and I'm standing in the UN and this light is descending upon me and all this stuff that you people heard. And then he says that I'm ready to inform. It's the 12th Imam who all Abrahamic religions believe there will be a savior.
Right.
But we just differ on who the character is. But Muslims do also believe that Jesus Christ will be one of the saviors in the end of time. So he reached a stage in his presidency where he was showing his followers that he is in direct connection with that figure that they will all die for. So he had that going for a good month.
But that's a relief. I'd rather he be a con man than a true believer.
You see, we would consider him to be a con man.
Yeah.
But there are many people in Iran
Right.
that would say, whoa, this is the president saying this. And he is being received by the grand ayatollahs and by the highest spiritual orders in the country. I mean, if he's lying, then why are they silent? And he also supported his false claims by many documentaries in English, Farsi, attributing certain names to himself. So it was a very interesting period. And then he won a second term. And it was even more interesting, but he's not that popular now anyway.
And now he's getting to Twitter fights with Jake Tapper. I don't know if you saw that.
Yes.
So how the mighty have fallen.
Indeed. I don't think that's him tweeting, though.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it's him tweeting. No, I think it's someone else.
So one of the things one of my friends told me, which please correct me if I'm wrong, let's talk about the idea of jihad, right? Because this is the big issue. And again, we're also ignorant about this subject in the West. I was under the impression that jihad, if it is not successful, therefore wasn't actually jihad. That jihad means it has the blessing of God, and that if you go for a mission and the mission fails, then therefore that's how you know it wasn't actually jihad. Is there something to that?
If I may explain exactly
Please.
what jihad is. Jihad is a word that is taken from the original word jahada, which means to exert effort. And anyone who goes in that path is known as a jihadist. Now, from a lingual perspective, a jihadist could be someone that puts effort towards raising his family, towards work, towards studying, right? Yes, I don't deny that from a lingual perspective, that is what it means. But is that what Islam means when it says jihad? All of the people that tell you that jihad means struggle and so on, they are right, but it's not in an Islamic context. If you pick up any Islamic book, and by Islamic book I mean Islamic scripture, so you pick up the Quran, you pick up the Bukhari, you pick up the works of the greatest Islamic theologians, the word jihad means war and means fighting. And why do I say that? Because it comes in the context where it actually tells you what age you have to be, what's the minimum age of fighting, who you do jihad against. So it's not just a word that is thrown in the books that anyone can interpret what it means. No, there's actually an explanation as to how to apply this word. And the context is war. And who deserves jihad? When is the time of jihad? So this whole idea that jihad means struggle is just a distraction. It does not exist in any of the serious Islamic scriptures.
So it's factual but not truthful. So yeah, factually that's what it means, but in practice, no one's talking about it.
And I also speak about it in my book. I say that all of the real Islamic books, and I say real because now we have some books that are being printed that are changing the meaning of jihad. No, the actual original Islamic scriptures mean war and mean fighting the enemies of God. and they don't carry out the social meaning of struggle. They don't. Now, to answer your question, after I've defined it for you from an Islamic context, jihad basically is a action that falls under the jurisprudential rulings of Sharia law, which is the law of God. And part of the law of God is that actions are by one's intentions. So if I intend to build a mosque and I don't, but I make an effort to, then God will give me the reward of building a mosque. If I intend to go to jihad and I failed to, I tried to, but I couldn't, then God will give me the reward of going for jihad. So there is no failed jihad, because in the Quran and also in the teachings of fundamental Islam, the victory is if you are killed or if you kill. So there is no loss in jihad. It's a winning business. That's why they blow themselves up. It's a winning business.
Let me start off with the website you want to go to, crowdcow.com/welcome. You're going to get $25 off your first order. Okay? Let me tell you what the site is. Crowdcow.com. You ever wonder where your meat comes from? No one wants mystery meat, and Crowd Cow has solved that. Their goal is to help you discover and enjoy the very best meat from small, independent ranchers and to make that experience convenient and fun. So not only do you know exactly where your craft meat comes from and how it's raised, it's also healthier for you and tastes better than anything you've ever tried. Here's the science behind it. 84% of beef comes from industrialized processes and companies that probably don't want you to know how it reached you. They're the only brand, crowdcow.com/welcome, that provides direct access to small independent ranches with the greatest possible level of transparency available anywhere. It's naturally healthy for you, lower in fat, higher nutrients. The meat from their farms is juicier and better tasting. They call it a win-win. I prefer my meat lean because I have a very, very bad palate. If you go to their website, crowdcow.com/welcome, and you look at their Japanese Wagyu beef, I have never seen meat like this in my life. Just look at the pictures. It's like a completely different animal. This is fancy stuff for affordable prices. Go to crowdcow.com/welcome. I brought the meat over. They gave it to us to try for Thanksgiving. Everyone was raving about it. And there's nothing more fun than having meat delivered directly to your door. And if you go to crowdcow.com/welcome, crowdcow.com/welcome, you get $25 off your first offer. What about this idea that the promise isn't that you're going to get virgins in heaven, you're going to get dates, the fruit?
Right.
Or raisins.
Yes, that is incorrect. That is incorrect. And I do not know who started that. That is incorrect because it can never be raisins, because the word, huriyat is the type of women that are in heaven, and they are known as huriyat. In fact, it can never be raisins because we even have descriptions of what these jihadists will get. A lady, her eyes are so big and so beautiful, she smells so good. If her hairband falls on the earth, the entire earth can smell it. All of these delusions, and each one has 15 maids that will be at the service of this jihadist, and he can name them. She will be his servant. All of these reports indicate that this is an actual female. It can never be raisins.
What do you think about this trope that's often spoken about in progressive circles, the insistence that Islam is a religion of peace, whereas every religion, including Judaism and Christianity, has peaceful variants and has warlike variants?
All religions can be religions of peace. All of them.
Yeah.
And all religions can be made religions of war. All ideologies can be used in that way as well. It's no big achievement really, and no big surprise. But you see, when we say Islam is a religion of peace, Islam has peaceful people in it. But which Islam are we speaking about? The Islam of Saudi Arabia that beheads people, or the Islam of Kuwait that would frown upon the beheading of people? Is it the Islam of Turkey that imprisons pastors? Or is it the Islam of the UAE where Christians would love to go there for a honeymoon?
Yeah.
Which Islam are we talking about? So when someone says Islam is a religion of peace, we need to first understand what Islam are they talking about, because many people fall into this trap. Islam is not one organized institution.
Aren't there 1 billion Muslims on earth?
1.8.
Yeah, the idea that somehow they'd have unanimity about
Yes.
it's nonsensical to me.
Exactly. We have 2 major denominations, and 73 different Islamic schools of thought. So I'm not a Muslim according to 72 of them, right?
Okay.
And each Muslim is not a Muslim according to the other denomination. No one's a real Muslim. But somehow we are the largest religion on earth, but we're not even Muslims according to each other.
Right.
So Islam being a religion of peace, this I consider it to be a motto, a nice slogan that has no truth in the current times at all. Because how many imams are in America?
I have no idea.
Okay, I can tell you there's at least 2,000.
Sure, yeah, easily.
Right? In Australia, we have around 500. When there's a terrorist attack, do you ever hear 20 of them come out condemning?
No.
Why? What's stopping them? Are they afraid of a caliph? Why? Why don't they come out and condemn? Why is it in Australia we don't even hear 50? Sometimes the senior one stays silent. I mean, if the big guy spoke, then we'd be like, okay, he spoke on behalf of them all. But sometimes the senior one doesn't say a word.
Well, aren't their argument going to be like, look, we're not for this, so why, just because we happen to have the same faith, do we have to be the ones to go forward and condemn it? It's a given that we condemn it?
Yeah, you see, this argument is usually posed by the leftists.
Right.
That, look, it has nothing to do with Muslims, right? So Muslims, the moderates, don't have a responsibility to condemn and unite against the extremists within their community. So they're basically preventing the moderates from criticizing the extremist, and that way the extremists can then operate openly and freely, and sometimes even become more audacious and run for parliament, run for Congress. Because it starts off with no criticism, a lack of criticism, and it ends up with them being in parliament. So this is a serious issue. Now, nothing to do with Muslims is a big lie. How can it have nothing to do with Muslims? How? The jihadist firstly believes in the same Quran that we believe in, believes in the same prophet, believes in the same 5 pillars, prays in the same direction, prays the same prayers, fasts on Ramadan, gives his same Islamic finances to the same place, says Allahu Akbar, is a Muslim, loves the Prophet Muhammad, is practicing. How is he not Muslim? In fact, the jihadist today is exactly how the early Muslims were like. Exactly. So if I were to read a report from the CIA about Osama bin Laden, right? A man who wants to conquer and wants to kill the infidels and did kill infidels, it sounds exactly like the fathers-in-law of Prophet Muhammad.
It's always interesting to me, this insistence that they're not really Muslims, when if someone is living their entire life in a Muslim lifestyle, maybe they have a better perspective on Islam than someone who reads the New York Times.
Exactly. And also the jihadist himself would be very offended if someone said that, hey, you're not doing this for Islam and it's got nothing to do with Islam and you're mentally ill. Because the jihadist is very smart and very calculated. Look at how many people they're recruiting. Right. They're not dumb and mentally ill. We have counterterrorism organizations and experts who are literally confused as to how to deal with these jihadists. They're very sophisticated. They're not dumb and foolish like what the media wants to portray them as. They're very calculated and they have a plan and they know when to strike, and it's not as easy as that to denounce them, no.
And they're outwitting intelligence communities on a daily basis. So clearly this isn't some kind of bumbling burglar.
Of course.
You know, like the Hamburg, you know, just breaking into houses.
Definitely. And also if you take a look at the funding, how much funding do our counterterrorism departments receive? How many hundreds of millions? It's not enough. The smallest militant Islamist organization is literally floating on petrodollars. Billions and billions of dollars. I mean, in order for us to understand their capabilities and abilities and reach into the West, we need to at least have the same budget as them and the same resources, and we're nowhere near that right now.
So before we started, you were talking about your work that you do in Canada with counterterrorism. Can you talk a bit about that?
I do work in different countries, obviously Australia, America, Washington DC, and Canada, and also the United Kingdom. However, and I also go to the Middle East a lot. However, I will speak just basically in general within my own capacity because of the agreements I have with people who I work with. What we do is we provide expert advice to members of parliament, to senators, to counterterrorism organizations, and also to schools. We start from primary and we end up in university, not-for-profit organizations. We give advice to media, departments as well, and sometimes even offices of prime ministers or presidents, but through third-party departments, so indirectly, for several reasons. And one of them is because I'm fairly new to the scene. I've only been very vocal for 2 years. And as one politician said to me, you are a missile that we don't know where it's going to land.
Right.
So we just want to make sure that you are the real deal, which is why I wrote this book. Because I believe many people see my turban and it looks like the turbans of the Ayatollahs. And they're like, oh, he must be their guy, you know. So I'm giving it time, but the feedback that we've received and the achievements that we've gained throughout this period says a lot about what we can do. For example, opposing the reopening of the Iranian embassy in Canada was one of the issues that I was heavily involved in. Also, the registering of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps as a terrorist entity, and we got the vote in the Canadian Parliament. Also, was one of the issues that I was involved in. I was recognized by the Canadian Parliament. So I like to say what I've done already. I don't want to say what we're doing. Yeah.
One of the things that I think is a great example of Western naivete. There's a book, Persepolis, which I'm sure you've probably read, a graphic novel, and it was her story. She grew up in Iran. I forgot the other's name. And the point was, when you had the Shah, everyone in the West is like, he's so bad, he's so bad, he's so bad. People forget, under the Shah, Andy Warhol would be visiting there all the time. I mean, the symbol of Western decadence. And they're like, he's got to go, he's got to go. And Chesterton has this great line, which I'm going to misquote a little. I don't remember the exact wording is, before you tear down a fence, think about why it was built. And the idea is, if someone is so bad, we're going to get rid of him, it's going to be better. And then what ended up happening is you have a far more militant, far more extremist regime in Iran after 1979. What was your perspective on that whole situation?
Well, we cannot deny the fact that there was a high level of corruption during the time of the Shah. The same with most governments. I mean, there has to be corruption. The Shah did do certain things that oppressed the Muslim community, the conservative Muslim community in the sacred cities of Iran. However, the Shah did all of that in his name. He didn't do that in God's name.
Right.
He never said, God put me here, and if you opposed me, I will kill you. He never did that. You see, today, if you go to Iran, and I'm not exaggerating, and anybody who doesn't believe me can ask an Iranian who has suffered or who has fled from Iran. If you were to stand in front of a police officer in Iran and just say this, say, the beard of the supreme leader is not nice enough for me. Just say, I don't like how he looks. I don't like his beard. You'll be dragged and taken and interrogated in prison and probably fined. And if you're let out, you're let out with a heavy bail. And we see this happening every single week. All you have to do is say, I don't like him. How can you not like him? This is the man appointed by God.
Right.
So it's not a question of following the law. It's a question of you not having it's a matter of you not having an option whether to follow or not to follow. You can't even not like your leader. So you live in Iran, you have to like the man who's running the country because God put him there. There's no opposition in Iran. That's all a lie. All people the supreme leader Ayatollah Khamenei, do you know who his number one opposition is? His own brother, Hadi. Where is he? In prison. Wow. Did you know that his brother-in-law, Ali Tehrani, Ayatollah Ali Tehrani, now living in France, he was the first one that took the supreme leader's sister, his wife, he took her and fled to Saddam Hussein in Iraq and had a radio program against his wife's brother, the supreme leader of Iran. The amount of corruption within the Iranian regime is so serious that it can never be compared to any other government in that region. The Shah was a prophet compared to the people that we have today.
Guys, holiday season is here. A lot of you are going to be traveling, and I want to tell you about free site, autoslash.com. It's the #1 site for getting a great deal on a car rental. They figure out the best coupons and discount codes to get you the lowest rate because car rental prices fluctuate constantly. So autoslash.com nabs it when they're down so you can rent a car at the lowest rate. You save an average of 30% and it's free. They search all the major rental companies like Avis, Hertz, and Thrifty for the best deals. They search for hundreds of coupons and discount codes for those companies to get you the lowest rate. But then they also apply discounts based on your membership affiliations like AAA or Costco. Then autoslash.com tracks your rental once you've booked it. If the rate drops, autoslash alerts you so you can rebook and save. And it's completely free. It takes all the hassle out of finding a rental and makes it affordable. I know a lot of the comedians here at Gas Digital use this to get to gigs. They all rave about it because it's free. Autoslash.com. I have a lot of Persian friends. Well, not a lot. I have a fair amount of Persian friends. And one of the things that bothers me, I was born in the Soviet Union, and Americans have this very racial idea of categorizing people, right? So they think kind of all Asians are basically the same and all Europeans are basically the same. And you go to Korea and tell them that this is basically Japan, you'll see the reaction you'll get. The same thing that they don't get is with the Middle East. Isn't it true that Persians are extremely racist towards Arabs?
Well, I was born in Iran, but
Right.
I do have Arabic lineage in me, but I sort of mix both. So I do have Arab and Persian in me, so I can speak with some authority on that. Look, I'm going to speak with all honesty. With all honesty. Whatever you do, never call a Persian Arab. That's one thing you don't do. I mean, an Arab would somewhat accept it because, we look the same.
Yeah.
They'd say we look the same, so we'll let that pass. But Iranians, to them, no. You know why? And they have every right to do that. Look at the Arab world.
Right.
It's a mess. It is nothing but a backward ideology. Literally, that flows right through Arabia. My ancestors too. Look, take a look at it. It's all just backwardism throughout the whole region. And, some people will say, but come on, we had great Arabian physicists and mathematicians and astronomers. Yes, they were killed by their own people because they were mathematicians and they weren't studying the Quran. Look at, when a Muslim says, we have great scholars in the history of Islam. Okay, what happened to them? What did the Muslims do to them? Where are they?
And Persia was for centuries a lighthouse of learning
Millennia.
and civilization.
Yes, Persia played a big role, probably in the entire region of the Middle East, if not the world, when it comes to art and trade. And now in a modern time, I mean, if we lift if we didn't have this government and we gave them their freedom, there is much that the Persian people can contribute to the world. There's nothing missing in Persia. Nothing. There's nothing that they cannot offer. From scientists, from new research. Absolute geniuses. Unlike their next door neighbor, Iraq, for example. If you take a look at Iraq, because part of the problem with Islam is Iraq. Where did ISIS choose its headquarters?
Right.
Iraq. You see, Iraq is another issue. How many people live in Iraq? Roughly around 30 million. So the Prime Minister has 30 million supporters. Muqtada al-Sadr has 30 million supporters. Ayatollahs have 30 million supporters. The lovers of Iran in Iraq have 30 million supporters. Everyone's in love with everyone. So we have a dilemma in Iraq where people can't make up their mind. And many of these people still want the Saddam regime to come back because they regretted, opposing him because of what happened after him. So when we speak about Persian and Arabs, yes, the Persians have every right to be disgusted because the Arabs haven't shown them any mercy.
When I was in Turkey not that long ago, a couple of months ago, before I went there, I was under the impression that when you talk to secular Muslims and you put a gun to their head and say, if you have to choose between the West and radical Islam, you're going to choose radical Islam. And then when I was there, it completely changed my mind. These people were not only very Western and secular in the values, they were grateful that Kemal Ataturk had basically taken them from, but for him, they would have been contemporary Iran. And now they're trying to take that away. What's your take on what's going on in Turkey nowadays?
You see, in Turkey, there are many, because of the strategic position of Turkey.
Right.
The strategic position of Turkey and the varying nationalities within it. So the Kurds, and then you've got the Turks, and then you've got the Turks from Arabic descent, and the Turks from Kurdish descent, and then you've got the Kurds who want to be part of Turkey, and the Kurds who want to be part of Iraq, and it's a mixture of issues within Turkey. Because of that, many foreign governments will find some of those groups as good allies, such as Israel now considers the Kurds in Iraq as a good ally, and so do the Americans, and so does Australia. Why? Because it's a strategic place. These interventions play a big role in the situation of Turkey. I think Turkey now is somewhat liberating itself, very slowly. Very slowly. I mean, no matter how extremist Erdogan is, Erdogan might dress in a suit and tie. This man is worse than Bin Laden. This man has an ideology of a global caliphate. I mean, I have a picture here where journalists are giving interviews, official, you know how you have like the BBC, the CBC. So these guys, in his own national broadcaster, they're giving interviews, and behind them is the map of the Ottoman Empire. And if you also remember, when Iraq was fighting ISIS in Mosul, Turkey sent an army into Iraq to then recapture Mosul from the Iraqi army. Just went right through the border. So he does have that in him. He wants to revive that Islamic caliphate, that empire. And so do the Chinese. They want to bring back their Chinese empire. And many of these leaders have these delusions that we're going to...
Putin.
Right. Putin as well. So Turkey is liberating itself slowly because they're noticing that this Erdogan destroying the economy, creating unnecessary wars. And Erdogan knows this because when this issue happened in the Saudi consulate, he grabbed onto it like no tomorrow. This was a gift from God for him, because now he can show the world that he is the real leader and he's going to handle this properly. And it's the West that want to destroy Turkey and are trying to make a plot and so on. It's a failed American plot. Right. It's a failed Zionist plot that we caught out. That's how it's shown to the people in Turkey. But to the West, it's we're undergoing an investigation. Saudi Arabia should cooperate. So Erdogan is playing on many fields, but the Turkish people now are waking up, but it's a very slow process. And it all has to do with the economy.
Oh yeah, because the Turkish lira collapsed in value over the last year. When I was there, we were just buying things left and right. It was amazing. What techniques do you use to de-radicalize young Muslim men, and why do you think they are becoming radicalized at this rate? What is being offered to them?
Firstly, what technique I use varies on the person I'm speaking to. And I will be very honest with you. I do label myself the Imam of Peace, and I promote peace, and I'm an advocate for peace. But if I sit in front of an Islamic extremist who is going around radicalizing people, I will not show him mercy.
Okay.
In the sense that I will do everything I can to humiliate him and bring out the filth from his mind, allow him to expose himself completely, and just shower him with comments that put him in his place. And the reason why I do that is because an Islamic extremist, an actual leading public figure, will only be put in his place when he realizes that you're not afraid of him and you know exactly what is in his head. Because I once upon a time was an Islamist. I know what's in their head. And I knew before, if anyone stood their ground with me and wasn't going to try debate me intellectually, but would rather put me in my spot like how a dad would tell off his son, that will work with an Islamic extremist. If you break that sense of pride, you break it, and they know that you're not afraid of them and you're not buying what they say, then immediately they will retreat. That's when the door opens for you to then prove them intellectually to be wrong.
There are certain things, I'm sure, that, you know how when you talk to someone who's trying to get over, when they're trying to be duplicitous in their speech, they're presenting one thing, but they really mean another. If you were arguing with someone who's just the listener to an extremist, what questions should you ask that person to get him to show his hand that he wouldn't want to talk about?
Well, firstly, you need to ask him a very important question. The main reason why Islamic extremists get away with it is that when you open up the topic of terrorism, they say it has nothing to do with Islam.
Right.
So then you ask a very basic question. If it has nothing to do with Islam, how did Islam expand so wide, so fast around the world? When Prophet Muhammad's army were made of 3,000 soldiers alone. When Muhammad died, his army was only 3,000 soldiers. And we know that because he told a 16-year-old called Osama to lead the army after him, to go and seek revenge from the Romans. And Osama's army was 3,000 people. And the Prophet cursed whoever did not join Osama's army, so all of them joined.
Right.
3,000 people only. Can you take over Europe with 3,000 people?
Right. Yeah.
How? Can Muhammad write a letter to Heraclius and say, I've got 3,000 people, we're coming? You can't. They'll laugh at you.
Right.
So how did it happen? If it wasn't for the sword, how did it happen through Google? How did it happen? If Muhammad died and there were only 3,000 soldiers, how did the Muslim world expand? The caliphates came after, and you guys expanded by the sword. So if you were founded by the sword, why are we outraged that ISIS wants to establish its caliphate by the sword? So anyone that says ISIS has nothing to do with Islam, no, they're lying. ISIS is actually following the very technique that the early Islamic caliphates applied when founding their governments around the world. It's exactly a photocopy of that. No one can deny that. By the sword. I mean, in my book, you see, in my book, and by the way, I've never said this before, I will say it now on your show. My book has the reference section. This is on paper, right? But if you go to my website, so imamtawhidi.com, I've written here, to view the original sources of these references, visit tawhidi.com/references. You can actually click on number 1, and the original Islamic scripture will come out, and you can then access it. So nobody can deny that these sources are real. That's how I've done it. If you go to all of the sources that I have put in here, proving that ISIS has everything to do with Islam, you will find the original scriptures admitting that. They admit that. So how to tackle a terrorist? Always bring them back to the history of Islam. Always. If you show them what they originate from, they can never run away from it. Never go to the Quran. You see, the Americans, well, all Westerners, they have this attitude that when you're speaking to an extremist, you say, well, the Quran says wife beating. Nobody really cares in the Muslim world what the Quran says. They care about what the books that interpret the Quran say. They take their laws from those books, from the books that interpret the Quran, and they are in their thousands. So you can never corner them into one book. And they're written by scholars, so they can then turn around and say it's his opinion.
Right.
But if you hold them to the very emergence of Islam, they can never run away from that. It's a fact. It's factual history. It happened. It took place. And then you slowly move on. You see, many people will now say, why did you not want to speak about the Quran? Did you know that the verse, Muslims stone people who leave the religion, or the adulterers? They get stoned. Did you know there is no verse in the Quran about stoning? It doesn't exist in the Quran. And it doesn't exist in the Hadith either. So if I were to hold an extremist and say, why do you stone people? And they say it's part of religion, but they can't prove it. It's not in the Quran and it's not in the Hadith. Do you know where it is? Narrated by the wife of Prophet Muhammad, that the verse of stoning was written on a paper and it was put under her pillow, and then when she was out, a goat came and ate that verse.
Huh.
Yes. The whole concept of punishing the adulterer and the apostate is founded upon, once upon a time there was a piece of paper that had the words of God, and a goat came and ate it. Just like my dog ate my homework.
Right.
the same line of thinking.
Tell me more about how Islam treats apostates, and isn't this a very effective method of making sure people stay the course?
Islam has zero tolerance to people who leave the religion. And now there's something very funny came to my mind. I'm pretty sure your listeners are mature enough to understand this. When you first become Muslim, you have to undergo circumcision. So you're going to get chopped.
Right. Wait, it's not when you're like a baby?
But there are converts to Islam who are
right,
adults.
Okay.
So they have to undergo circumcision. So they're going to get chopped. So they say once upon a time a guy converted to Islam. And he went and they circumcised him. So then later on, he changed his mind. And they said, well, you choose one. You want to be circumcised or do you want to get your head chopped off? You're going to get chopped anyway.
Yeah.
So we have this chop ideology that is going around. And part of this chop ideology is the ideology of apostates.
Right.
And it did begin during the time of the Prophet Muhammad. And it began because Meccans were, you know, how today we have what we call, let's go spam a politician's book with bad reviews. Right? Or I bought it and it's bad, but you don't really read it.
Yeah.
That's what the Meccans did to Prophet Muhammad. We're Muslims and we left because it's a bad religion, so don't join. So the law then was to kill whoever does that.
Okay. To make sure you get the 5-star ratings. Yeah.
to kill whoever does that. And then it carried on. But I don't understand now, if Islam promises by the power of God that Islam will be dominant, why are you killing everyone that leaves? I mean, you're going to be dominant at the end anyway.
Right.
And plus, don't you say you are the fastest growing religion? Or don't we say we're the fastest growing religion? Then why are we worried if someone leaves? I mean, I don't understand. I think the ruling on apostasy existed before it was part of the development of the religion, but no longer really exists.
What do you think of... This is something that Westerners don't understand. Louis Farrakhan and the Nation of Islam and Elijah Muhammad, isn't their relationship to Islam basically the same thing as the Mormons to mainstream Christianity?
You see, Louis Farrakhan, I will say this, and I've never spoken about him before on record. I've tweeted about him. Farrakhan, and he can go do what he like. I mean, wait, before I say this, legally, can I say my opinion and then continue? Because he might come after us.
Well, he's not verified anymore, so we're good.
Okay.
Not like us.
Okay, so this man, in my opinion, this is my opinion, he carries the same ideology as Bin Laden, except that he wears a suit.
Right.
And he dresses like a Westerner. This man is so barbaric in his thinking. He literally reminds me of my extremist teachers that I had back home. You see, Farrakhan has a very simple way of thinking. He begins with the fact that you are wrong. The moment you speak, you are a satanic Jew, right? There is no room for dialogue with him. And then when you point that out to him, you say, hey, Farrakhan, I mean, come on, you got to listen to the other side. No, but you oppress black people. But your history has always oppressed black people. He goes into this whole, we are oppressed, and plays the victim card. But the moment you give him an opportunity to speak, then you are the racist, you are the satanic Jew, you are the evil person, you are this, you are that. And recently, he confirmed that he is nothing less than an extremist. He went to Iran and led the death chants against America. Look, you can hate Trump. You can say, yes, okay, for example, I don't like Trump, so, death to Trump. Okay, we get that you don't like Trump. But why would you say death to America, your own people? Why would you say death to Israel? If you have a problem with the Israeli government, then make that position clear. So you could have said any other thing, but no, you see, the problem with Farrakhan and extremists like him is that his problem isn't with the borders of Israel. It's with the existence of the Jewish people. And I always say that to people. Their issue is not an issue of borders. It's an issue of existence. And it's not an issue of a constitution or what he thinks about Trump. This guy, Farrakhan considers himself to be a citizen of two countries or two empires. One is the American government, so he's a citizen of the American government, and he's also a citizen of the one Islamic nation. I'm not speaking about his nation of Islam. No, the one Islamic nation. The fact that if I'm sitting in America and the Mufti in Mecca tells me to oppose the American administration, I, in America, will oppose the American administration because the Mufti in Mecca told me to do so. This unity of Muslims is the main problem that we have today. That a man sitting in Australia will stab a police officer because someone in Syria isn't happy with the condition in Syria. This link that Islam is one body. If one part of it, and this is what the scriptures say, if one part of it is in pain, then the whole body should experience that pain. And Farrakhan does exactly that. And he wouldn't do that if he didn't have millions and millions and millions of supporters. Yes, I don't know how many people attend his congregation. I've never been there. But, excuse me, what he says is exactly what the millions of Muslims love to hear. And he knows that and he continues to do that.
But what is the Islamic view of his theology, basically the idea of the spaceship, the mother wheel? Do you know about this?
I've never heard of it, no.
Oh, I get to tell you about
Yes.
Farrakhan's ideology. So his predecessor, his mentor, Elijah Muhammad, it was either a dream or a vision, I don't remember. But they have something called the mother wheel, which is this gigantic spaceship which is orbiting the earth. And it's made of wheels within wheels, and it's enormous. And I'm guessing this is not part of the Quran.
And they believe in that?
Yes, I can look at it.
Well, that's very normal. You know why? Let me show you what I've said in my book.
There's spaceship stuff in there?
It's not in there, but it's even worse than this. Did you know that according to Islamic theology, Allah is a donkey-riding, obese boy wearing a golden burqa that descends down on a donkey every night? Every night. I've written this in chapter 2, and I've named it The Difficulties in the Foundations of Islam. Every night, the majority of Muslims believe that God descends down on a donkey to accept the prayers of the Muslims in the evening. Evening is a very sacred period of the day. To the point that some homes in Baghdad previously would leave piles of hay on the roof. I've put references in my book. They would leave piles of hay on the roof so that the donkey of God can eat from it. And you know who says this?
Oh.
The Muslims who are ridiculing other Muslims. So you've got a giant Islamic scholar writing a book saying, and I can't believe these guys have been putting hay on the roofs of their tops in Baghdad to feed the donkey of God. So there are Muslims that believe that God rides a donkey. So if you're telling me about a spaceship orbiting planet Earth, God descends down on a donkey every night. So you imagine God between the moons and planet Earth coming down on a donkey every night. I mean,
okay, let me play.
This is their IQ, literally. It's a one-digit IQ.
Let me push back. Let me play devil's advocate. One of the things you said, one of the big criticisms from anti-Semites is that Jews have a divided loyalty, right? That we prefer Israel over America, and that's where our loyalties really are. Aren't you basically saying the same thing about what you just said about Islam, that their loyalties isn't to the states, it's to a foreign power?
Okay. They are very different, and this is why they're very different. The nation of Islam is a reality based on no organization and no administration that existed from the very beginning of Islam. So all Muslims have a duty to protect all Muslims. But do they? Do all Muslims?
No, they kill each other often.
They don't. So the foundation, to begin with, is corrupted. And it's a hypocrisy. It's a hypocrisy to begin with. You kill each other and then you're worried about someone saying something about Islam. All of you guys want to unite against him. And they condemn me for not being part of it. Whereas when it comes to Israel, the Jews might be favoring Israel over America, but don't forget, the main reason where that comes from is Jerusalem. So Jerusalem, because of its sacredness and how elevated it is of a city, any Jew would take Jerusalem over any part of the earth any day. Whereas if you were to ask a Muslim, would you send an army to fight Israel for Palestine? They'll say no. Why would we do that? It's two different issues. One is a sacred city, therefore their loyalty is attached to it because of the origins of its religion. And the issue of Islam is a hypocritical matter that exists only in the minds of people, and it's not an organized concept. Some Muslims believe in it, some Muslims don't. People like Farrakhan do. However, if you ask me about Mecca, then yes, all Muslims will prefer Mecca over any part of the earth any day.
Have you been on the Hajj? Have you been to Mecca?
Of course.
Have you seen the giant cube?
Of course.
Well, tell us what it's like doing that. I mean,
in my book, I've also written about this experience. It was that moment that changed my life completely, 2006. It changed my life completely. I became more religious, more astute when it comes to Islam, because I experienced it firsthand. And we threw stones at Satan, what represents Satan. No, when we did that, the Satan I threw rocks at was the original Satan. Today they have a very sexy Satan. He's 3 stories long. They've renovated the place.
Okay. Upgrade.
Right? Yes, Satan's got an upgrade. No, it was the original Satan when I went there. A very ugly pile of rocks that you throw. It's all symbolic.
Yeah.
I did that all. And when we were there, actually, 2006, it was the execution day for Saddam Hussein. And the Muslims were all celebrating in Mecca that Saddam Hussein had died, and the authorities came and tried to arrest many people because, Saudi valued their relationship with the Iraqi dictator.
Right.
So it was a very interesting trip for me. I saw the politics of it. I saw the religious aspect of it. And also I detached myself from the Western world completely. So there was no internet, no phone, nothing. It was just me and my mother in the middle of a desert. Yes, there were hotels, it's a developed city, but you're completely detached because there are rituals you have to follow and attend on a daily basis. And I've been to Hajj, I've been to other rituals such as Umrah, which is a ritual that takes place very similar, but not during the Hajj period. I've been to it many times. I've been to other sacred places that Muslims believe can be more sacred than the Kaaba itself, than Mecca, such as southern Iraq, Karbala. I've done all of my rituals around the world. And I can tell you that if the West wants to understand how Muslims are so united, you need to begin by taking a look at Mecca. Mecca brings the rich and the poor, the black and the white, together in one place, doing one ritual, wearing 2 pieces of cloth. Everyone's equal on that day. And, it's somewhat very interesting when you're walking and there's a minister in your country walking right beside you. It does change the Muslim. And when they return home, they return with the vision that now it's time to make everybody understand what they're missing out on, and that's where the da'wah and the preaching begins.
HeshiSocks.com, HESHI socks.com. The promo code is welcome30 for 30% off. Here is why I love my Heshi socks. They are pillows for your feet. You can wear them with sneakers, you can wear them with dress shoes. They've got all different kinds. But what they have in common is they're made with this nice high-end Pima cotton, which is super soft and highly breathable and absorbent if your feet sweat. And it's antimicrobial, so it keeps your feet from stinking because it kills the bacteria. As they put it, basically they're helping you get laid when you take your shoes off. Although at that point, you're probably getting laid already, let's be honest. They come in different styles: basic, fashion. They have arch support. Cushioned in the footbed, they heel in the toe for maximum comfort. If you go to HeshiSocks.com, HESHI socks.com, and use promo code welcome30, you're going to be telling me thank you, and I'll be telling you, yeah, you're welcome. Do you think it's true that there is increasing radicalization with young men within Islam? And if so, why do you think that's happening?
Radicalization well, me and you call it radicalization. That's what we refer to, because that's what academia and counterterrorism research refers to it. In reality, what we call radicalization is actually a Muslim being devout.
Okay.
So an extremist doesn't think he's an extremist. He thinks I'm off track.
He thinks he's principled.
Yes. He thinks he's got the truth.
Yeah.
And in reality, it is the exact truth that the fathers-in-law of Prophet Muhammad had. You can never deny this. Extremists have always been there, and they are growing, and they're growing rapidly. England is a finished country. I've said that. It's finished. If Anjem Chaudhry can say what he says about England, about the Queen, about the Constitution, openly says, I want to overthrow this government and establish Sharia law, and still walk the streets and nobody says anything to him, you know by then that your country is finished. If Anjem Chaudhry had said that in Romania or Poland, he would literally have two options: to die or to leave the country.
Yeah, right.
It's as simple as that. Or to stay at home forever.
Yeah.
And then starve. You won't be able to even go out. And literally in Poland, I've got friends in Poland, you have organizations that don't need any advice from anyone to take a stance against an extremist. So if I run an electricity company or a gas company and I see that you've insulted my country on TV, I'll go search the database. If you're my customer, I'm cutting services from you immediately. It's like that in Poland, whereby in the UK, the extremist attacks citizens, then he is given a lawyer by the government from the citizens' taxpayer
Right.
money. He then goes and sues the government and takes benefits. And then when he's out from prison, he's given a nice place to stay and goes straight to the mosque, extremist mosque, and shows no sign of improvement. And while he's in prison, he refuses to engage in any de-radicalization courses. In fact, Anjem Chaudhry...
He'd be more radicalized
Yes.
in prison. Everyone gets more radicalized in prison, of course.
Exactly. So the idea of radicalization coming to an end is a lie. It's a lie, and it's a distraction. And especially the reform movements. The Muslim reform movements are the biggest scam you can ever come across in the history of Islam. They are the problem. They are preventing the world from dealing with the problem. So, and we can speak about Muslim reform if you like, but radicalization is not coming to an end. In fact, while we're asleep, while we're talking now, they are busy radicalizing people.
Are you not how have you not been knocked off? Are you not in fear of your life on a regular basis?
Well, the news has plenty of articles of me being attacked.
Yeah.
I have a scar on my head that will stay with me forever. I mean, my house, my vehicle, my person, I keep getting hit every now and then. I have a very good security team in Australia. Very good security team. The police in Australia are magnificent. In the UK, I've got my personal security in the UK. And this isn't a matter of two people walking with me. No, these people, they scan the internet.
Okay.
They've got their own programs where they scan everything to make sure my events are in order, do background checks on people who buy tickets. Even the people who send me gifts to my postal address, that all gets scanned. It's a very lengthy process. So I've managed to stay alive until now. However, I do really believe this book will attract some serious attention towards me. I don't want to say a fatwa, but it's possible. It's possible. If it happens, then it just shows you that I've done the right thing.
Right.
I've hit the right nerve. So I've managed to stay alive. In America, I don't need security. America is one of the safest places, and I walk here freely. I refuse to have security in America. I mean, this is as best as it gets. If I can't walk freely in the land of the free, then, you know, I shouldn't be here, to be honest.
Do you think that there's truth to these right-wing claims that with increased migrant migration in places like Sweden, you have an increase in violent crime, especially sexual assault, or do you think that's just racist propaganda?
No, I don't think it's racist propaganda. I think it's proven facts. There's an entire organization called the Rape Crisis UK. I mean, you imagine having an organization just to tally the rape crisis. And the numbers are in the hundreds of thousands in 2 years. We're not speaking about something that's happening in Jupiter or Mars. This is happening in our countries. The rape that's going on is serious, and they're all migrants. They're all migrants. They're all refugees. But are all refugees rapists? No. Are all of them terrorists? No. Some of them are doctors, and seriously, some of them are lawyers. I know refugees in Australia. In fact, in my organization's constitution, our main focus is to help refugees back on their feet the right way. So we don't want refugees working cash in hand and then taking benefits from the country, from the government. So we do work on that level. But they're not terrorists. Some of them are very educated. But we need to differentiate between what a refugee is and what an economic migrant is. I mean, you can't be filling out a visa form to come to Australia, and while you're filling it out, your golden bangles are jingling, right? And the moment you land, you want to take selfies with your brand new phone,
right?
A brand new iPhone X or something like that. And I'm so poor, give me your benefits. No, these are economic migrants. So what if he came by a boat? I don't understand. So what? This guy wants to come to Australia, wants to come to America. He's going to come in any way. He's going to arrive in any way he sees fit. If a plane is too hard, airport security is too hard, I'm going to come by boat. There's no issue. And many people feel sorry for the boat comers. Do you know how much it costs to get on that boat? $12,000 to $13,000 USD.
Jesus. That's
how much it costs from Iran to smuggle yourself through Indonesia or Malaysia and then end up in Australia. Oh, we feel sorry. It's, the media makes it seem as though they found the boat somewhere and they all jumped on it.
like Gilligan's Island.
Yeah, and they pushed themselves, right? And then they go, yeah, we need to welcome them. No, each one of those guys paid at least $10,000 to get on that boat. That's how they smuggled people. That's how much it cost for smugglers. We need to be honest. So when these guys do that, they've already scammed us by appearing oppressed, appearing to be victims. They come in the country, and the moment they settle, they buy homes. They just can't wait to get that citizenship or permanent residence. Why? Because they've got everything set. It's just that one document that they need. These people aren't needy. They're not poor. Most of these migrants, and I swear to God, I know them. I know many of these people that I speak about. I know them because I know from their surnames. A surname in the Arab world indicates how powerful your tribe is. So if someone, for example, has the surname of Absawi or Asadi, right? Do you know what Asadi, they own half of Iraq. Literally. So these people have very wealthy families back home. Villages they own. Gold businesses. People in petrol industries. But somehow the media has become very successful in making it seem that these people, they need every dollar they can get. They are starving. No, they're not starving. But there are good people and there are bad people. So I like to differentiate between the economic migrant and the refugee, then between the real refugee and the fake refugee. Because the real refugee, the moment he reaches America, the first thing he does is go to university and say, how can I begin studying? I've got a certificate. How can I get the equivalent of this? Because I want to study, I want to get a job, I want to give back to this country. However, a fake refugee, not only for the first day, for the first 10 years of his life, he will be standing outside those welfare centers instead of going to a mosque. Those welfare centers will turn into mosques. All the Muslims will be there. Why? Because it's money. These are the people that destroy the economy, that destroy the country. I'm a real migrant. Me and my family, we are real migrants. I was born as a refugee. I went to Australia as a migrant. I didn't go to Australia as a refugee. I was born as a refugee. So I went there as a migrant. We worked hard. My father, he would get a tutor to come to our house, and the tutor was 80 years old. He could barely walk at that time. This is going back 1995. In 1995, he was 80 years old, over 80. His name was Peter. This man would teach my father English, basic words, and my dad would work so hard. He would just go make money, very hard. My father worked very hard. He did everything, from retail to engineering systems. He worked very hard, day and night. Very hard working man, just to pay this tutor to learn English. Whereas many refugees will say, I'll pick it up from the street. I'll get a girlfriend. She'll teach me English. We are real migrants. We give back. We pay taxes. We work very hard. My dad took me from an Islamic school, put me in a public school when they were trying to radicalize me. So we are the real migrants, and there are many people like us. These are the migrants we want in our country.
I got two last questions for you. You mentioned earlier that at one time you were radical and regard yourself an Islamist. Now, what changed your point of view? Okay.
Before, I was just a moderate in Australia. When I went to Iran in 2007, 2008, I was subjected to a new world, a new form of Islam. And it appeared to be the real type of Islam, not the fake one we had in Australia. This was the real deal, where you would be willing to die for your leader, where you would be willing to join Hezbollah. So I'm Shia. I speak about the Shia side of things, because if I speak about the Sunni side of things, then you'll get messages that I'm being sectarian.
Okay.
So I like to focus on myself first. And in my book, I have spoken about Sunni Islam because they are the majority, but I've made an entire chapter about the difficulties within Shia Islam. So I like to keep a balance. I met a man, a eulogist, and I put the story in my book, who then began insulting the supreme leader in Iran. And this shook me. I was a devout Muslim who would die for the leader, Khamenei. And we have a religious eulogist respected by all the Ayatollahs who's insulting the supreme leader in close circles. And we were having dinner, and I said to myself, this guy is the grandson of the Prophet Muhammad, the eulogist. How is he? And he's a good guy. How is he insulting the leader? So there must be something that I'm missing out on. And that was when I discovered that there was a huge part of my religion, a huge chapter that was missing for me. And that was the opposition within Muslim theology. What other theologians were saying about the ruling theologians. And when I went to find out who they were all under home arrest. Their books were banned. So then I began digging deeper. And I switched classes. And then I got in a lot of trouble with the Iranian intelligence.
So this is the Muslim version of being red-pilled.
Of course. It was the best red pill ever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, it came in two stages. First, I had to de-radicalize myself from the political Islam, which was pushed by the Iranian regime. And then I had to free and liberate myself from the Islamist teachings. So you can be an Islamist, but you're not supporting the regime, but you're still an Islamist. So I had to then liberate myself. And then slowly I began to call for reformation completely against Wahhabism, Salafism, Khomeinism. Yes.
A last question, and this is very important because many of my audience members are hipsters. I'm from Brooklyn. You have the best beard I have ever seen. What is your trick to maintaining it?
Okay.
I'm sure you use product.
Okay. I'm going to be... Well, I'm always honest. I try to always be honest. I think this is the 17th time someone asked me that.
It's important.
In New York.
Yeah.
And I've only been here for 3 days.
It's amazing.
Okay. I make my own oil.
Okay. What do you mean you make your own oil?
I make my own beard oil.
How do you make beard oil?
Okay. It's very sophisticated because there are many calculations that go with it.
Okay.
But it's not very sophisticated anymore because I know exactly what to do. But it basically, it's a combination of almond oil and tea tree oil, as well as other products.
What other products?
There are other products.
You're not going to tell us.
The thing
Are you going to start selling this? Because people would buy it.
Because many people are telling me we will buy it.
Yeah, I'm positive.
And my beard was patchy before.
Okay.
It was patchy. And it was very low. And in any case, so I'm thinking of a charity. But this time I don't want to be like everybody else and just go for children or animals, which I do donate to. But no, I want to do something for counterterrorism.
Okay.
Right? I might start something. I'll think about it.
So
start something.
What advice would you give people who want to have a good full beard?
Well, I pray 5 times a day. Okay. And with my, 5 times a day, but in 3 sets. So I wash my face a lot.
Okay.
Because before every prayer, I have to perform the wudu, which is the washing ritual. So I wash my face a lot. And my beard gets a lot of water. That's number 1. Secondly, I wash my beard with cold water only.
Okay.
I never let hot or warm water touch my beard. Thirdly, I use a hairdryer when combing my beard, and I use a round brush.
Okay. What's the hairdryer setting? Cold? Hot?
No, my hairdryer is hot, but it's a distance. I don't hold it too close.
Okay.
So from a distance. And I go over it. So as I'm combing, I would go over it from top to bottom.
Okay.
And then I let it just settle in, and then I would just tap it to give it that natural look. I use blade to just outline the lines, although extremist Muslims don't use blade on their faces.
Okay.
Because you're changing the creation of God. No, I tidy up because I have to be tidy. There are many other things that go with the beard. I mean, the barber that I visit, I make sure that he doesn't ruin my beard for me. And any barber can ruin the beard. If they're using a used blade, you can get an infection. Right. Especially with someone like me, because I'm tidying up, so my pores are regularly open. Right. I can get an infection. A beard is very, very important in my life. It's become very important. Yeah. And I might release but my oil falls within that family of tea tree oil and almond oil. It's none of those chemicals that people use.
Do you use any product in it? Like hair gel or wax?
Nothing.
Wow.
Nothing. I don't use any hair gel or wax at all. Nothing.
It's very impressive. And it's an impressive book, and you're an impressive person. So thank you
very much.
So much for taking the time to come in here.
Thank you for having me, Michael.
We will see you all next week. You are welcome.